White stone with which green feathers are born. Now, I know in the modern day people don't have patience for riddles. I know, like for me, unless I can work it out in the first 5 seconds, I don't care about riddles anymore. Uh, so I'm gonna give you a clue. Okay, it's to do with food, and the answer is nothing obscure. So like every single person listening to this episode, when they hear the answer, they go, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it." So that's
White stone, which green
white
feathers are
stone
born.
with which green feathers are born. And see, Aztec
Ah,
people, I'll tell you at the end, towards the end of the episode, yeah?
yeah,
So
yeah,
Aztec
tell me then.
people, it's going to kill you now. You're going to be distracted all episode. Aztec people, they loved riddles because the majority of the population was stuck doing manual labor. Every day, mostly farming. So there's a lot of time to be in your head and just be bored. Like the mind is bored while the body works. So riddles kept people occupied, and they loved to share them with each other. They'd see their friends at, like down the market or whatever. They'd hear a new one, and then they'd go to work or whatever they were doing, whatever their job was, and they'd be like, "I heard a new one! I heard a new one!" And they'd be like, "What?" And people would crowd around, and they'd be like, "Oh, I already know that one. I heard that one from my wife's friend." Da, 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 that kind of thing, right? And or they'll be like, "Okay, that's awesome," and it was so sort of fun for them. Then they'd go off there with their manual duties, be it carrying water down from however long they were walking for or whatever. It was just in their mind, and they would think about it all day. And then eventually they'd find out the answer, or they'd try and figure it out. They'd be like farming and looking around, like, is it that? Could it be that? Is it this? And it was just a great way to occupy the mind. So they loved it. They loved it. You can tell. I mean, I personally can really imagine that being a good source
That'd
of
be a lot of
entertainment.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's like when you're just you're plowing a field or whatever. I mean, I, I won't go into. I'm covering some about their farming
I
techniques,
was,
but
yeah. I was just about to segue to you. Like literally, it would have been perfect. You ruined it. Yeah, I was gonna
But
say.
I can imagine the thinking about it. I can imagine the good fun thinking about that when you're like, you're doing a manual task, and you're like, what was that? What was that thing? Because right
Exactly.
now it's like you'd be like, I don't know. Tell me the end. Tell me the end. But we've got things to do.
In a world of like phones and computers and things that headphones to listen to, we kind of lost appreciation for stuff like riddles and jokes and even
Yeah.
just singing and things like that, which is the way people entertain themselves for the majority of history. So that's imaginable, but you know what's unimaginable? The amazing capital of Tenochtitlan, which left the Spanish asking, "Is it a dream?" Right? Like they were so amazed by this thing. And I'm going to hand over to you, Rob, to tell us a little bit about Tenochtitlan and generally what it was like.
So I'm focusing on the farming here because I teased at the end of the episode that they invented farming techniques that are still used today. So let's look into those things. They're called chinampas or floating gardens. The floating gardens is the name that the Spanish gave to it because they made it look like they thought they were floating in essence, but they're not. They're actually just built up onto the bed. So it's like a really shallow lake bed that they would use, and then they would like have in the corners. They'd either use like willows, to, like the roots of it would like kind of build it up. Like if you've seen mangrove forests that they stop, they can like when you see like there's like a tsunami, and if there's like a mangrove forest, it just stops it immediately.
I think I have seen a mangrove. I think I actually took a little mangrove tour when I was in Costa Rica. They let you get in a
Oh
boat and
sure,
they
yeah.
take you around and show you. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're like super important to like maintain land, but willow trees do something similar. So they believed that they used either a willow tree, and then they have these little like you see these little stakes in the ground. They have all these little stakes, and then they'd use like this all the mud from the bottom of the lake bed, which was super nutrient rich, and dump it all across the land, like the little land area they built up. So they built up from kind of the mud from next to it, and kind of like rotting vegetation to give it some extra nutrition.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And
So
for audio only people, what we've done is put up on the screen here is like
yeah,
these. They look like these islands. Yeah, they look like they're floating, but
yeah.
as you say, they're not. But they're little patches of farming area, and then in
Hmm.
between, they're almost like roads, but with water. And they would use the canoes to go up and down this, which is actually the water transport is actually their best form of transport. If we remember that they didn't have anything like horses or ox to
Hmm.
like carry things, so traversing along the water was their best mode, easiest mode of transport available.
That's it, and that's what they were doing here. So all the farmers would have their own little canoes that they would travel along lake beds to get to their different plots of land. So if anyone's wondering what the modern technique that this is then formed into, it's what's the word? I had it written and I've literally lost it.
Well, while you look at that, I will tell audience that I remember I've heard Tenochtitlan being described as like basically like a Venice of kind of a place. And it was much larger than Paris, London, or any city in all of Europe. So it was incredible, like for its time. I mean, hell, it's incredible for now. You know, it's pretty awesome.
It's hydroponics, by the way. Hydroponics is a technique it's like the modern variation. Hydroponics were only invented in like the 19th, 20th century, but this is the first ever use of anything that's hydroponics in its style.
That's cool.
And so it means that the land was always kind of the farmland was always moist. It always had the right level of moisture because it's literally surrounded by water, and it meant that there's some suggestions that it was about 7 crop loads it could do per year. So it'd literally be consistently just crops. So it'd be like,
for us people
peppers,
who know nothing,
chilies.
For us people who know nothing about farming, is 7 like a lot? How many is normal?
If you think, actually, now I have to go through my memory of where I talked about farming in the House of Lancaster, and that would be about 2 crops per year.
Okay, so that's a lot more crops, but yeah, that's a lot more food. And that explains their really large population, like something like up to 300,000 people living here. So that explains why they can support that many people.
And again, if they needed like the soil was getting it, they just pick up a load from the base of the soil bed, from the river, the lake bed again. You just pick up a load of soil from the lake bed, plop it back on, you've got fresh soil.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, maybe we could probably learn something from these people, but yeah.
No, but it's a lot of food. As I say, 200,000 people to Tenochtitlan at its peak.
Oh, really? I had about 300,000. You say 200,000?
Oh,
so I've heard different numbers.
I read 200,000, so maybe
to be honest,
it is disputed. It is disputed. How many people?
And 300,000 was the high end, but I went for the high end for the hype.
The big numbers.
Yeah. But I did also see 200,000.
The most commonly grown crops is maize, squash, tomatoes, chilies. I believe that's
exactly right, because I looked it up in my section. Do you want me to go on to it, or do you have more?
No. You're gone.
That segues are flying so smooth.
Even if I ruined the first one. Drop
us a like for the segues, guys, or a 5-star review wherever you're listening. We're on Apple now. We're on Amazon now. We're all over the place. We're even on TikTok.
Wherever you want to listen to us.
Yeah. So, life, food, entertainment is what I'm going to talk about. By the time I'm done, you're going to know exactly what it's like to be an Aztec person. You'll feel like you were an Aztec person in the previous life. Because I was just thinking all sorts of questions. Like, I was just going down rabbit holes after rabbit holes. Like, what about this? What did they do for this? What did they do for that? Because what I find so fascinating about this, right, is that the Americas and the New World and the Old World, as we've talked about previously, are very, very separated places. And it is kind of like having 2 versions of humanity, like kind of going through time in parallel with no contact whatsoever. And what I find amazing is the things that they've done differently, sure, but the things that they do the same, I think that's really interesting. Because if 2 populations of humanity with 0 chance of contact have both invented or created the same things, I think that's really cool. I think that tells you a lot about humanity as opposed to the people and the civilization itself.
I mean, the more of the wars I go into the last one, that was like with the spear and the atlatl.
That's it.
That was
yeah.
That was invented in different places, completely separately, with the same invention.
Yeah, and you were right. As you pointed out, atlatl is the oldest, one of the oldest like range weapons in existence. Yeah, amazing. So, I've basically summed this up into 10 categories. Right, this is my top 10 of everything I found out. And number 1 is sports. We know of a Mesoamerican ball game that was played by the peoples of the region. So if you jump to the next slide for people who are watching, Rob, thank you. So this, of course, includes the Aztecs being Mesoamerican peoples. And we don't know
I've seen this game before,
You've seen it, yeah? So we don't know the exact rules, but there's a version that's been revived and played in Mexico today. And it's called, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's called Ulama. And for those watching, for those listening, what we got on the screen here is like there is so the game it was a team sport, 2 to 6 players on each side, and they got the ball. They have to get the ball through these holes and the holes are in these stone circles that kind of stick out of the wall. So I think of it like a basketball hoop, but like the other way. So instead of it being like you have to throw the ball to go through the top and come out the bottom, it's like sideways. So you got to throw it through them from the right to come out the left, kind of thing. And there's still
in between both teams, so that they both it's one hoop for both teams. They're both having a go at that same hoop.
Yeah, well, I actually think there's I've seen versions where there's the hoop on both sides. So I was wondering,
really?
like, is it one hoop for each team? I don't know. There's so many different versions of this.
To be honest, it's hard to then know the exact version the Aztecs played versus maybe
exactly.
like the Mayans, or because it's that Mesoamerican sport rather than being specific to them.
Exactly. So this is the crazy bit. You ready? So what you're allowed to use to hit the ball, like how are you going to get the ball through the hole? Well, it's not exactly known, but the version most likely to have been played back then was that the only thing you're allowed to hit the ball with is your hips, your butt, or your upper thighs. There's some mad thrusting action these guys were doing, man. Imagine. It's mental to me. The fitness and stamina. This hoop is really high up, by the way, for those listening. Like, it's not like right there on the ground. It's like as high as a basketball net, maybe even higher by the looks of it. And these lot have to hit it with their hips and perfectly aim it through that hole. That, to me, is madness. These lot must be better than just sports, if you know what I mean with that kind of thrusting action. But anyway, what are you saying?
Yeah, do you know what the ball's made of?
I do. The ball is made of a liquid latex that is extracted from rubber trees, and it could weigh between 3 and 5 kilos. Did you already know that? Is that why you asked?
Well, I know it because they actually invented vulcanization before Europe invented vulcanization. People do it to Goodyear is the guy who in Europe invented the vulcanized rubber. They were actually vulcanizing their rubber. That's how it worked.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing how many things that we usually think about things they're behind in, but they're actually ahead of some things as well, which is really cool.
And the fact is, eventually, hundreds of years later in Europe,
they
could have just asked them. It's one of those things. If you just asked them how they did this thing, rather than just almost dismissing them sometimes.
Yeah,
it may well have been how much.
You can imagine a Spaniard playing this game with them. Like, show me how to play. How do you do this? And they're like, what is this thing? What did you make this out of? Could have happened, but I guess it didn't. All right, number 2, attraction. I wanted to know what these lot found attractive. So they liked, in each other, right? Men and women liked clean teeth and breath, which really ties into the dentist thing that you were talking about in the first time we covered Aztecs, Rob, that they had a really good dental game. They're really ahead of the hygiene game. It makes sense now, right? Like, if it's all about attraction and stuff, it's going to be a big thing. Speaking of teeth,
well, I guess it also matters if you have the option, it then becomes that importance. If you go, if you had no dentist at all, it wouldn't be important what their teeth were like. However, having a dentist means it shows that this person's wealthy. They can have access to the dentist.
Which one came first? Which one came first? Chicken or the egg? Yeah, that's really smart.
Exactly.
All right. So speaking of teeth, though, they damaged teeth or narrow eyes were sometimes seen as signs of laziness and immorality. So it's not just ugliness, but it's like a moral level, which just feels so harsh, isn't it? Like, you wouldn't want to be Chinese looking in this place, that's for sure, mate. There's just
or just as a kid you smash your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. It's Jesus. That's probably why they got so much obsidian bling and stuff in their teeth that we found out about. But anyway, clear, smooth skin was attractive, so sources mention them using plants or clays as cosmetics, and this is both men and women, by the way. Straight, long, well-kept dark hair was important for both sexes, which also explains why we always see them portrayed with the long hair, right?
Yeah.
Stature and fitness, not too thin, not too fat, a healthy, well-proportioned body, which seems universal, isn't it? Like, I feel
that is pretty universal.
Yeah.
Although I will say, just about the hair. Remember we had the Sean ones we were talking about in the last episode, the guys who they read that at super elite level, shave half the head and paint dye it blonde.
Yeah, true, there you go. I guess it's a ritual thing, isn't it?
Maybe that's like the one break to the rule, because it's like there's it's important to have long black hair unless you are this, because there's a reason. They're super important. They're like,
it makes you stand out even more.
Fire.
It makes you stand out even more. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about clothing. So they are well-made, brightly dyed cotton clothing and jewelry, especially jade and turquoise. They signaled beauty, wealth, and desirability. And fragrance was hugely important as well. So people wore garlands of flowers and rubbed themselves with aromatic resins to smell pleasant, because this was tied to your sexual attractiveness. So it's funny, it's like a proto perfume in a way, right? If you think about it, the way this stuff works.
I mean, at least when you go around the cities, it'll smell good. That's one positive.
Yes.
It's not
Exactly. People had fresh breath. People's
Well,
bodies smelled good. Like, this place sounds great,
I mean,
for the tier
there's
list
some
later.
medieval Europe where they're like, oh, it's like having a bath a year sort of thing, and this is this is not that.
Bath a year. Well, I will say this also. I forgot to mention it in the intro. This episode is the final time we're going to address the Aztecs for now. So we're going to put them on a tier list at the very end. So definitely hang around for that. We're going to see the "Would you want to live there" tier list. We'll get to that. So keep this in mind when we're playing that game later. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about behavior and personality before I move on. Women, they liked men who were brave and eloquent, military valor, being well spoken, and being generous. Seems pretty universal from what we've discovered so far about the other places. And men, they liked women who were modest and reserved. Outspoken or flamboyant behavior was considered unattractive. And I just thought this was really interesting because sometimes we kind of get the impression that, in the old world, be it Europe and Asia and stuff, men found that attractive in their women because, like, of religion. It's like people say, like, Christianity and Islam and all this stuff. They have, like, ways that men and women are supposed to behave. But think about this. This place has absolutely no connection to the old world, does not have these religions, and men still find this attractive in their women. So it's almost like I don't want to go as far as to make a bold claim and say it's like biological, but it's at least something about humans.
There's evidence to say that there is something, unless again it's just they've developed exactly the same way, and there's other societies who didn't. But
well,
it's hard to say.
But men also liked women who could grind maize really well, which was a common thing when we get to food later. Who could weave finely and just run a household generally. That stuff was considered desirable.
Useful. Being useful seems to be important.
Yeah. I mean,
it's again one of those traits which is like just like goes a long time. It's like, are you useful in the house?
Yeah.
Where there is whichever way it is.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
Given the time period, it's like death was quite common, so starvation and not having money and stuff like that. So you wanted a competent partner, shall we say. All right, number 3, beards. I've got a fine beard, you've got a fine beard, but you know what I was thinking about? And this was the last one I added to the list, by the way, and I actually added it. This list was originally 9, but I thought of it yesterday and I was like, wait a minute, why have I never seen any Aztecs like portrayed with a beard? Have you thought about that? You see the images; they never have facial hair, never.
Yeah, so I guess so.
Yeah, right.
Although I will say, I would have. My only guess would have been their drawings are quite primitive looking, and maybe it was just like it's difficult. Ignore it. I don't know. Maybe that was the
maybe. But I'll tell you what I found out. Right.
Yeah.
So, firstly, biology and genetics. Turns out Native Americans generally, from all over the Americas, don't have much body hair. And because they descend from East Asians, if you think about the way humanity would have left the Americas, reached the Americas, is via a land bridge that was connecting Russia to Alaska. And at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose and this bridge was lost forever. But the peoples who migrated there were East Asians, like Chinese and Japanese and all this kind of stuff. So, and they don't have body hair either, right? So you can see how this is a trait that goes all the way back to them. So that's one thing. They naturally have less hair. Some Aztec men maybe grew a moustache and had small patches of hair on the chin, which again just makes me think of like the stereotypical Chinaman, right, with the thin stash and the little triangle. But full thick beards, like the way the Spaniards would have had it when they arrived, nah, that would have been rare, like if happened.
Was it seen as like a negative, or was it just they couldn't grow them, so it was just a thing?
You're on fire with your questions today. I can't answer it exactly, but I can tell you just generally about grooming culture. And clean shaven is just the norm. You expect it to be clean shaven. Aztec culture strongly emphasized personal hygiene, which is a theme coming up a lot, right? Smells, your teeth, all this stuff.
I mean, to be fair, you put 10 years ago in most of the Western world, no beard was the classic for work. That's where most people, if you had like a reasonable job, you expected to be clean shaven. It was really common.
God, I'm so glad those times are.
I'm so glad it's gone.
So like daily bathing, hair care, and dental hygiene, all these things were really common. So Aztec men, get this, they actually plucked their facial hair out using obsidian tweezers. Sometimes, sometimes bone tweezers as well. So that's how it was, how normal it was expected to be clean shaven. That's one of the reasons we never see them drawn with their beard, because if they do grow any facial hair, they're plucking them out. which sounds painful
Right.
as hell, but it's it's what it is. And
If there's not many of them, I guess it's not too bad.
yeah, I guess if they're not that thick. So a smooth, youthful face was associated with beauty and nobility, and warriors and nobles were highly conscious of their appearance, as we talked about the way they would dress to be stand out on the battlefield and stuff. So this kind of reinforced that practice of plucking hair. So the nobles and stuff, they would pluck in their hair, so this would kind of trickle down to everyone else. Number 4. Monogamous or polygamous? You know how we talk about things that like in the old world, and it's like I thought maybe they're associated with religion, the idea that you take one wife and you take, this kind of thing is a thing in Christianity, at least. I know obviously in Islam you can have like up to 4, whatever, like depending on the circumstances. But I'm just curious, like what's the situation with what's the situation in the Americas?
I'm really curious as well.
Yeah. See, I was thinking of everything. I was like trying to imagine what my life like there would be. So how many would I have, right? So as a commoner, commoners were monogamous, all monogamous, and in fact it was frowned upon. Like adultery was seen as a really bad thing, like really publicly shamed, sometimes even like worse penalties if you were discovered for that. So yeah, turns out that's pretty common. However, nobility were polygamous, but they had one principal wife. So they had like a main wife,
Right.
and then they had like second, third, fourth wives, which are less important, but it was that kind of thing. And finally, the emperor.
Like the marriage, like your first marriage is the one which is like the noble marriage, being like, oh, and then you could take like, oh, I like that woman, and I'll take her as like
and all this stuff. Yeah,
it doesn't matter if she's a noble anymore. It doesn't, it's the first one that's like for an alliance or for this or for that.
Yeah, and the emperor was.
I guess anyway.
Emperor was extremely polygamous, basically. and you know what? This just isn't even that surprising. Like, it kind of goes back to that resources thing. If you're a commoner, you probably can't afford to support more than like one wife and one family. So it kind of makes sense, I guess.
Well, it's also one of those things that maybe when you're saying about whether monogamy or polygamy is based on religion, it might well be more to do with the fact of the elite wanted that differentiation. Where you go, they're nobility, and we go, we want to be seen as different from you, so we can be polygamous and you can't.
Yeah,
almost might that be that separation instead?
Maybe. But it turns out that this structure that I just described is actually similar to other societies that also have strict class-based systems. If you remember from previous episodes, I said there's no social mobility in Aztec society. What you're born into, that's what you are forever, unless you become a warrior and you rise up the ranks, making become really successful. Then
really successful though.
Really,
it's the elite level to become.
Most guys who try it, they'll never make it, but yeah, it's and so these other cultures, like for example ancient Egypt, worked exactly the same way when it comes to monogamy and polygamy and stuff like that, which is interesting. All right, number 5. What did they eat? Food. So you kind of mentioned this already, but the Aztec diet was plant-based at its core. Corns, beans, and squash. And I wanted to talk about farming too, believe it or not. But it's just a minor thing because I just thought it was really cool. It's called the Three Sisters system, and it's interesting. So the three sisters being corn, beans, and squash. So you plant these all together, and the corn grows tall, providing a stalk for the beans to climb around it. So it gives them access to sunlight. So you see, it's like a complementary system. The beans fix their roots. With their roots, they fix nitrogen into the soil. And this is a vital nutrient for the corn but that they're climbing around. So you see, it's like the synergy. But there's also the nitrogen is key for the squash. And the squash grows broad plant leaves along the bottom and creates shade, which keeps the soil moist. And it deters weeds because their weeds don't have access to the sunlight. So this power combo, known as the Three Sisters, is how they grew loads of their food. And actually, it's a really awesome farming technique that's, of course, organic. And apparently it's still used sometimes in some places just because of that like incredible synergy. And it's exactly what we want from growing our food. So, yeah.
I can imagine not use a huge amount just because of the fact of it's very manual process. That's the reason why all these amazing farm techniques aren't used as commonly, because we use machines to do a lot of the work, and you can't do it so specifically to be here's that, then that goes, and then this grows around it, because everything has to be perfectly placed to work.
Maybe I'm not going to comment on farmers' lives. If there's any farmers in the comments listening, please drop some comments. Let us know, because I've never done it before. But yeah, so it wasn't just that, as you talked about. Chili peppers were a thing. It was used in almost every dish. These guys were having avocados before it was cool. They had sweet potatoes, they had tomatoes, loads of stuff. In terms of protein, they domesticated turkey, they hunted deer, rabbits, iguanas, fish and turtles from the lake as well. But the one I want to highlight for protein is an absolute key player to their nutrition, okay? A whopping 60% pure protein. You ready? Are you licking your lips with excitement? You're salivating?
Oh,
this is going to be amazing, okay? It's a small fly. A small fly collected with nets from the lake. And they're
yum.
Yeah, they're cut up, mixed together to form little balls.
How is it so small? How are you cutting this type?
I don't know.
Just like smooshed it sort of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And they form them into like little cakes, like little balls, which are cooked in salty water, and then they're wrapped in the corn husks that were from the Three Sisters system, and they're sold on the markets. You know, so and it was a really common food that they all ate, and it's actually apparently like with that amount of protein is one of the reasons why they could sustain their populations and everyone could live like healthy lives pretty much because of that. And it wasn't just them; it was their eggs as well. So these flies they lay their eggs in enormous numbers, and they call them wheat of the water. Was what that's called? It's delicious, eh?
That's so gross.
So they ground them into a paste and baked them into cakes, and they flattened them out into like tortillas. They loved it, mate. They did all sorts with the eggs and the fly. This fly was a staple of their of what they ate. They also ate some aquatic worms, toasted in salt, which is kind of weird. But you know, if you think at that time, you eat whatever you eat whatever you want, right?
As long as it's not poisonous. Shove it
Exactly.
in.
And you know what? I reckon there are a lot of bodybuilders today that if I gave them a tortilla made of fly eggs and I said it's 60% pure protein, they'll be like, hell yeah, give me that. I'll finish with a few luxuries that you probably wouldn't have access to as a commoner. Cacao, which is what chocolate is made from. I don't know if did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Cacao.
Yeah, cacao, yeah. So what chocolate is made from. And it was less perfected than our chocolate, but they could still use it to make a chocolate tasting drink. So very high status stuff. And they also had access to honey and vanilla, which is native to the region. So it's kind of amazing.
I mean, honey's native to a lot of regions.
The vanilla, I mean. Vanilla is so it's kind of amazing how many staples in our diets today come from this region. Like, we have a lot to be thankful for. And generally, mate, when we do the tier list, the food doesn't sound that bad. It doesn't sound...
Although they do... I have heard issues with protein generally. Much as they had the flies, that I've heard that is an issue, that the amount of protein they were getting in their diet.
Fair. Well, you know what? There's one time...
Especially during wars.
Ah, makes sense, yeah. There's one time of year, right, where the birds... This is the only thing that the old world and the new world had in common. Migratory birds. They would leave the old world. I don't know enough about birds to tell you what season, but I guess winter? I don't know. and they fly across to the Americas, and they would populate Lake Texcoco, and it'd be just filled with these birds. And during that time, they would be trying to catch them and eat those as well. So, you know, that's the thing. Anyway, number 6. Probably what some of you lowlifes have been waiting for listening to this. Drugs. What do these lot do? Now, this is a clean podcast, but don't worry. This isn't actually going to be anything anything graphic or anything like that. Don't worry. So, alcohol, strictly forbidden. There were severe punishments for drinking it. But actually, people did it anyway. It's just like every other human society, it turns out. They drank a milky alcohol brewed from the agave plant. But they also had hallucinogenic mushrooms. So magic mushrooms, essentially, it was just like really common and widely used for fun and just to escape the pain of reality, I suppose. But it was especially used among poets and priests for their religious significance. So there you go. Mushrooms all over the place. Number 7, beds. I was like, how did these people sleep? I was curious. And they slept on something called a petate, which is a kind of woven mat. It looks kind of like a yoga mat, but it's made of plant fibers, like palm leaves and stuff. You can still get them today in Mexico. I don't know if anyone still sleeps on them, but it can be used for other things, I guess. Commoners slept on these all in one room with their family. Can you imagine that? You and all your siblings in one room, and your little petate. And nobles, though, they had bigger homes, so they had their own rooms, and they had higher quality materials like animal skins for their patates. So I imagine they were more comfortable, basically. And emperors and elites, as you can imagine, had a much nicer setup. They had cotton blankets, jaguar pelts, feather pillows, stuff like that. Right, number 8. We're getting there. Number 8 is work. I'm sure by now you're really understanding society, but what did you do for work? All right. So most men, farmers. Manual labor all day, every day. Some were potters, builders, merchants, scribes, to name a few. And military service was mandatory the moment you reached adulthood, so that would take a chunk of their lives. But it would be cyclical. So they would work their normal jobs and then be called upon in times of war to go and fight, basically. So they were full-time soldiers as a profession too, like as guards and stuff like that. But in terms of like everyone being a warrior, that's part-time warrior kind of thing.
I can imagine it's more of if you've gone up in the ranks a few times, then you could go like, oh, now I can be a guard because of, it's probably you have to hit a certain level, I can imagine, to reach that point.
Yeah, I can see that being the case, especially if you're like guarding an elite or something,
Yeah.
So what about women though? Because these are men's jobs, but what about women's jobs? Well, they were a bit different, and they could be maize grinders. Remember I said that men they liked women who grind maize? Yeah, maize grinders. It's a task that could take hours every day. Maize is corn, essentially, right? I don't know loads about veg, but I'm pretty sure maize and corn are the same thing. And they could make tortillas.
I thought maize was more wheat than corn is.
Oh, is it?
No, I'm wrong. Maize is corn. Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I apologize. So they could make tortillas that could be used. They could be market vendors, basically. Women would often be the vendors in the market selling all these items, it was a massively female-dominated generally as a profession, being a shopkeeper, basically. They'd weave cloth. They'd be midwives, artists, scribes, and of course they'd raise children. Now, weaving gets a special shout out here because finely woven cloth, it was so valuable, it was used as currency, and a skilled weaver, she could literally support her whole family if she was good enough. Remember I said in the attraction section that men also found women who were good at weaving, like women who were good at weaving attractive.
Makes sense.
Now you're getting it. now you're getting it, right?
Find yourself a good weaver woman.
That's right. So it's something I should say again, and this is just the bleakness of history and stuff, is that these jobs are all hereditary. I said the class system is fixed. It doesn't matter what you wanted to do with your life. If your dad was a potter, you were a potter. If he was a farmer, you were a farmer. Like I said, most people were farmers. There's no way out unless, of course, you're a man and you join the military and you do extremely well.
I mean, again, very similar to what we're used to when you look at Western European history as well. Is your dad was a blacksmith, you become a blacksmith. Your dad was a farmer, you become a farmer. Exactly. It's how did you learn these skills? You learned off your parent. Yeah. That's how you progress and learn skills.
It makes sense, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's move on to number 9, currency and payment. We're talking about buying and selling things, but how did they actually buy things? That was my next question. I was like, okay, I'm working a job, but how do I get paid, right? So the Aztecs, they didn't use coins, but instead they had a barter system. So they would trade things, basically. So for example, the very valuable woven cloth I just mentioned, that can be used to swap out for like other really valuable things. They also traded cacao beans, which was the most common small change item. It was like their equivalent of like pennies and cents. So I have a couple examples for you. For a turkey egg, it would cost you 3 cacao beans. A rabbit would cost you 30. Cotton cloaks could be anywhere from...
How big are cacao beans?
I don't know.
I don't actually
know. Fit them in your pocket. Small enough to fit in your pocket.
I think there's little tiny things.
Yeah. That's what I'm imagining, yeah. So cotton cloaks, they could be anywhere from 65 beans to 300 beans, depending on quality. So,
that's why you need a good weaver. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. So you could trade other stuff too, of course. It wasn't just that. You can trade copper axe heads, obsidian blades, all that stuff could be used as well. And my final one, number 10, is books. I've mentioned scribes a few times as a profession, but I thought I'd clarify. They didn't actually write books, not in the same way. They used pictures and glyphs, and they didn't have a full reading, writing alphabet. Census data, calendars, dynastic histories, so who was descended from who, that kind of thing, only for important people, of course. Religious texts, maps, land ownership claims within the city, stuff like that. They wrote on deerskin, agave fibers, and they used natural pigments from plants and minerals as ink. And now, I hope you feel like, you know what? I knew nothing about how Aztecs lived. But now I can imagine my day, right? You can imagine you waking up from your petate bed in your room full of your family.
All I think about is like a sack of potatoes when you say that.
It's like a yoga mat made of straw. It's not a bad life. It's just as bad as it could be. I don't know. But maybe you're about to tell me about some worse parts, because you're about to tell me about some cultural and religious aspects.
let's talk a bit about the Aztec religion. So, religion to the Aztecs is kind of very different from a modern concept of what religion is, even if you exclude the sacrificing. So, to the Aztecs and Mesoamericans in general, the gods were all around them. They're like part of your everyday life. There are hundreds of known gods, but they're probably, to be honest, there probably was way more than we know. There's just ones that we know of. And there's only one god that is a truly Aztec god.
Oh yeah,
And that is, it's the only one, which is the Huitzilopochtli. Do you want to bring him up on screen?
is that the one I called Chipotle last time?
Yeah, exactly. Huitzilopochtli.
Which, by the way, for listeners, of my defense, apparently Chipotle is a Nahuatl word. So
Yeah,
I wasn't
it
that
is,
far
it is.
off. I wasn't that. Go on.
Yes, because all other gods before, all other have origins before the Aztecs. So he is the god of war and the sun, represented as a hummingbird.
And they're not, to be honest, they're for audio only. They're not great drawings. They're like
No.
funky, colourful.
No.
Like you can't really tell when the leg
Yeah.
like begins and ends. It's one of those ones. Anyway, go on.
So there are four main gods and lots of minor deities. And rather than just looking at the main gods, I just thought I was going to look up the most fun, the weird gods.
That's what we
So
like to hear.
let's see what we can start with. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm to this episode. I'm going to give up on the Nahuatl names of things. I'm calling them the translated names. So this first one, he's called 400 Rabbits.
You know what? I'm so glad you're going to use the translated names, because one thing I realized we haven't talked about so far is how awesome the names are. We've been trying to pronounce them, but what they actually mean is stuff like Descending Eagle. Imagine if that was your name.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my name's Descending Eagle. Nice to meet you. Cunning Coyote. This kind of stuff.
Because actually, I actually looked it up. I left it out, but the Huitzilopochtli, it means like hummingbird left or something, or hummingbird eat, and it's like these like there's like an importance of directions.
Oh wow, okay.
But I didn't go much further into it. But apparently, it's disputed what it truly is.
That's cool.
This is 400 rabbits, which are a group of rabbit-like entities who frequently meet for parties and get drunk. And what the belief is when you drink, how you act. Because obviously, when you drink, people act very differently. It depends on which rabbit you're challenging.
Oh,
It's a different rabbit depending
that
what
is
kind of drunk you
awesome.
are.
I'm gonna start talking about that in like normal day life. Like, oh mate, I must have been the forgetful rabbit.
Yeah, and there's apparently loads of named ones as well. Like every single one of them had a name and had some sort of importance as well. So it wasn't just like, when we say they have hundreds of gods, I'm already starting with 400 of it.
That's crazy.
Okay, all right. Next up, this is gonna get a bit gross. This is the Filth goddess.
The Filth goddess. This is not some
Filth
kind
goddess.
of this is not some kind of kink thing, is it? Keep it clean, bro.
This is not anything related to kinks. So she is depicted with excrement around her nose and mouth.
Okay.
But it's actually more interesting than you think it is. She was the goddess of debauchery, but also fertility, because the Aztecs believed in a cycle of transformation which necessarily entails destruction, decay, sacrifice in order for regeneration and renewal.
Okay.
So this god is supposed to be like, basically, it pulls in all that grime and brings out new life. That's the essence of what this god is. So it seems gross, but actually they don't have that sense of good, evil, like kind of bad thing. It was just more, this is how life grows.
Sounds very Nurgle from Warhammer.
Yeah.
I like it. So you know what? A very, very small tangent, if I may.
Yeah.
About fertility gods. I recently found out, when like looking into Age of Mythology and sort of prepping for our next mini-series, which we'll get to later. Did you know that the Norse fertility god is a man? Isn't that really weird? I don't know. I feel like fertility gods are always women. But like the Norse fertility god is Freya, apparently. He's one of the playable major gods in Age of Mythology. I thought that was that made me, I don't know, maybe I don't know enough about mythology, but anyway.
I thought Freya was, maybe I'm wrong. I thought, well, isn't there Freya and Freya?
Yeah, the male one. There's a female one as well. The male one is apparently.
I thought Freya was female, but I guess I don't know.
But if you think about it, men are fertile for way longer than women, so
Yeah.
it's maybe, you
But
know.
that's maybe what it's. I think that's a lot of things with fertility gods is because it was more to with they perceived it as the women as the important part because they're the ones who birth the baby. So
Yeah, I
that
think
was, I
that's
think,
it's obvious
it
why
makes
most of them
sense.
pick women, of course, because
Yeah.
yeah, they're the child's
But there was actually
bringers.
quite a few different fertility gods, but I say I found this one the most interesting.
Okay, all right, moving on.
Okay, so I'm gonna do one last god, and I did say I was going to talk about human sacrifice
This is such a
in this
goofy
episode.
drawing, man. It looks like a guy dropping gangster signs. Like, what is he doing?
So this guy's called our Flayed Lord.
All right, now we're getting metal.
Now we're getting metal, and I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to tell you about a crazy festival related to this guy. So 40 days or maybe a year. So it's 40 days to a year before the festival. This is, I think, something you mentioned before about a captive who was designated. So this is the one who was like built
Yeah,
up
he's like
to
a
for this
special
sacrifice.
sacrifice. They build him up all year.
This
Is
is
it for this guy? This god?
this is this guy. It's this guy.
Ah.
Okay, so they were designated to impersonate the god and was celebrated in public as a living image of the god until the festival. They would talk courtly manners. They would be walking about the city, playing a flute, smoking tobacco, and being praised by the people and even the emperor.
Wow, that's, you know, it's not a
Yeah,
bad way to go if you consider you've had a
yeah.
life of luxury beforehand.
And you're a captive. You could just be captive and sacrificed.
Yeah,
You're
that's
captive
true.
from war.
You're one lucky
you just
captive.
yeah. Okay, it gets better. He was even wed to 4 young maidens representing goddesses.
This guy, imagine just getting knocked out in war and then waking up and this
Yeah.
is your life for the next year.
40 days a year, so hopefully the year. Hopefully you get a full year of
Hopefully,
this.
yeah. If they say, "Oh, you ready for the sacrifice?" Oh, no, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not feeling it. I feel like maybe the god isn't happy with it yet. We need more food, more
Yeah.
tobacco.
So I feel worse about the slaves who were the young maidens represented because they were also sacrificed as part of the ceremony as well.
Okay.
So because these four girls were wed to this one guy, sacrificed as well. So they were just slaves. They weren't even captives.
That's brutal. That kind of reminds me a little bit like, you know, ancient Egypt where like you get mummified and sometimes they kill your partner to mummify them with you. Like it's just like, no, let me live a little longer.
Or in Norse where one of their personal slaves was to go to help them into the afterlife. They sacrificed with them when they died.
A lifetime of serving someone and you think, yes, they're finally dead, and it's like, no, don't do this.
Okay, so the slave gods in inverted commas were sacrificed at the main altar by 6 priests. By the way, for 4 of them, which I find interesting. They cut open their breasts with an obsidian knife, cut out the heart, and after that, the corpses rolled down the pyramid stairs.
Wow.
I actually forgot to say, maybe edit this in. Disclaimer for this section.
Yeah. Okay, it's all good. It's all good.
Maybe in post put a disclaimer and say, if you're a
Aztecs.
squeamish nature.
You should know what you're getting. It's Aztecs.
Okay. Maybe just even it gets worse after this. So maybe let's if you get more, if that was enough for you, skip to the next segment because
there's chapters
the corpses
wherever you listen. You can jump ahead.
There's chapters. Just skip to the next chapter. So after this point, the corpses were then flayed, and their flesh was given to the most important Aztecs. The emperor, we got the best part, which is the femur, and the flesh was eaten.
God, this is some crazy stuff, dude. This is some chaos shenanigans.
It gets weirder.
I'm starting to see where they get inspiration for like these like cults from, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But by the way, there was you're going to say about protein. Apparently, part of the belief this is a real theory here that I heard written is that the part of the reason of eating the human sacrifices was for the protein.
Oh, okay.
They actually believed that some of it was eaten for that. Okay, so other captives will be clothed in the skin of the flayed corpses and adorned with the ornaments of those who were killed earlier that were as gods.
Yay, I think.
They were paraded through the city by their captors. And finally, on the next day, they fought in a mock combat against eagle or jaguar warriors. They only had mock swords made out of feathers, though.
Oh, okay, but the eagle and jaguar warriors had actual swords. Okay.
Of course, they had their obsidian swords.
So you had to fight with your feather sword.
So they were butchered basically by the Subjacurate Eagle warriors.
Wow. So it was a real fight to the death still.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
No, there wasn't a fight to the true death. Once the captive was beaten down, he was sacrificed by a priest wearing vestments of our flayed lord. His heart and blood from his chest was then presented to the sun.
Even worse. Even worse.
Yep.
It just keeps getting worse. Tell me this is the end.
No, it's not. The captor would take that blood, walk around the city to the statues of the gods, feeding them by painting blood on their lips.
I'm starting to think this isn't a clean podcast anymore, you know?
Just this bit.
Okay, we'll see if we get flagged. Go on, keep going.
The captive's corpse was then brought to the captor's house, flayed, cut up, his flesh given away and eaten. And there was a special link between captor and captive, and the captor would not be allowed to eat any of the captive.
Okay, wow, there's an honor system here. Yeah.
Poor or sick would walk through the streets wearing the skin of the sacrificed people, begging. And for 20 days, the priest too would wear the flayed skin, often adorned with golden feathers, and then it was stored away until the next festival approached. And so the skins were they're basically stored in a special
recycled.
cave in our flayed
okay, so they don't just throw them away; they're useful causes.
No,
okay.
they're reusing them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some upside to
Very
it.
good.
All right, we good? We done with the gods?
That is it. That is the talk of the gods.
All right, let me give you my bonus topic then. A nice quick. Oh, you know what? Actually, super quick before we move on. I heard that archaeologists have found massive walls of skulls in the temples. So this is part of the evidence that this stuff really happened. Like huge, just walls of skulls, that kind of stuff you see in films and movies. You know, it's you can if you look it up, you can go and these are tourist sites now. They're kind of amazing. But anyway, my bonus topic, okay? It's nice and simple. All this talk about Lake Texcoco, I was wondering what happened to it. Where is it now? Because obviously Mexico City. I was getting mixed up. Mexico City.
New Mexico is the American state.
I keep getting it mixed up. Mexico City doesn't, have this anymore, right? So what happens? And in the 1600s, it turns out, the Spanish started to drain it by building channels and and tunnels, and to get more land, basically. And Mexico City has an expanding population, and it was getting too big. They needed more space. They wanted more farmland, and they did this slowly over the centuries until it pretty much disappeared. I will say though that to the east of Mexico City, there is some salt marshes there, and this is the remnants of Lake Texcoco, and so you can still kind of see
the salt, because remember we said there was a salty lake to the east, and then there was the freshwater lake to the west.
Still
to the east, that makes sense.
That
makes
cool
sense
if you think about it.
Because in the west there wouldn't be any salt, because they that wasn't a salt. It wasn't salty water at that point.
I have heard though that there are some restoration, environmentalists and stuff. There's some restoration efforts taking place in Mexico today, and they've created something called Lake Texcoco Ecological Park. They're trying to restore it. Now, obviously, they can't restore it fully because Mexico City is
there's a city there
exists now, but they're kind of recreating parts of it, and it's really cool.
Mine's the law.
Okay.
So the law covered everything from criminal behavior, divorce, or land ownership. All swathes of it. So while it was a big empire, laws could be very different depending on where you lived. But as its core, it was a very strict social hierarchy in the Aztec society. So how did this work in practice? So they had 3 levels of courts. You had at the local level, so where minor disputes were handled, and often judged by senior warriors.
Warriors got so much prestige, didn't they?
Wow. I know. For more serious crimes, the cases were brought to the court in Tenochtitlan, led by experienced judges. And the most important trials, those especially involving nobles, they were taken to the high courts of the emperor's palace itself.
Okay.
All right. But what if you weren't satisfied with your ruling? What happens then?
What, there's an appeal? There's an appeal process?
Yeah, there's a court of appeal.
Okay.
So, located in Texcoco, so one of the other of the states of the Triple Alliance. So this court was made up of 12 judges and presided over by the king of Texcoco himself. They gathered every 12 days to decide the most difficult cases. And there was strict rules. No case could drag on for more than 80 days. And judges had to work from dawn till sunset. And one last thing, just to add a real Aztec flair into this.
Oh God. Are we okay? Go on.
Corruption was absolutely forbidden. And if a judge accepted a bribe, the punishment was death.
Okay. Okay. Well, at least it's not like flaying or you know the other things you were talking about
No,
earlier.
it could be.
Yeah,
It could be.
could be. All right. Awesome, man. Awesome. I love that. I actually really enjoyed this episode. And we are going to move on to the tier list, but just quickly before we do, if you like what we're doing, please drop a like on the video. If you're listening, be it on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. It super helps. And drop us a comment. You know, if you've gotten this far, drop us a comment. Let us know how you feel. In fact, I think it's time for me to tell you the answer to the riddle. So,
Oh, yes.
white stone with which green feathers are born? The answer? An onion. Because it grows from the sprouts from the top. Get it?
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. If you've listened this far, you're a real one. We really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Drop us a comment saying onion, and I'll know that you're one of the legends who made it this far, right? But it's not over yet. We're gonna do the tier list. We are going to do the Would You Want to Live Here tier list. So far, we have 2 civilizations on here. We have the Swedes in the A tier, and we have the House of Lancaster in the C tier. Today, we're placing 2 Aztec civs because they're in both Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 3. The cutoff point is the moment Cuauhtemoc became emperor. So this is before the siege of Tenochtitlan, but after the Spanish get chased out of Tenochtitlan and Moctezuma dies. So that is a very clean distinction because it's going to make a difference where, you know, what it's going to be like to live there.
And I guess we're doing the starting point is not the Aztecs as they led up to they're not their march from the north to it's where they actually formed.
Yeah, it's Triple Alliance. Yeah, from the Triple Alliance.
We're doing from the start of the Triple Alliance.
Yeah, because that's the formation of the Aztecs. Yeah, I think so.
Sure. True. Yeah. That feels fair. Yeah.
So let's.
So about 100 years. Then that's a very small period until.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they hit the
AOE 3 Aztecs is even smaller period of time. It's like it's the shortest period.
I know. We'll do 2 first before I get to my thoughts on 3.
All right. Well, break. Just for people listening, just very briefly, we have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. Each of these tiers have a meaning. S is pretty great. A is surprisingly okay. B is high roller. So if you roll high, it's pretty good. C is tolerable if you're lucky. D is guaranteed bad time, and F is please God no. So Rob, Aztecs from AOE 2. What do you think?
Okay, to be honest, I didn't properly give my thoughts. I've been thinking about this a little bit today, and I hadn't fully made up my mind until now.
Go on.
And I'm actually going to be thinking it's between S and A.
No.
The only thing is the end. The end is bad. The
Stop
end is bad.
S and A tier? No way I'm allowing that.
But okay, let me explain myself here.
Go on.
Okay. Think of the time we're in. You had potentially as well. You were the dominant nation in this area. If you were poor, you had good farming land, great amount of crops. People weren't starving. You had entertainment. You had the chance. Everyone had a chance. Even though you're saying there is no chance to become an elite, there was a chance if you were a warrior. There was still that opportunity.
And even women, to be fair, their jobs didn't sound that bad. Like being a weaver, being a scribe, being So yeah, you know what? It actually isn't too bad. And a quick note on the 3 cities, though. The Triple Alliance is made of 3 city-states. If you're in Tenochtitlan, which is most likely, because it's got about 200,000 to 300,000 people, then we know what that life's like. We've talked about it a lot. But Texcoco is actually an interesting place because when that period of time was happening in Tenochtitlan, where they were burning these books, remember Itzcoatl you were talking about in the first one, Rob, about how it was basically a bit of a regressive period of rewriting history. Well, while that was happening in Texcoco, they were creating libraries. It was considered like Texcoco is like the Athens of the Aztec Empire. Like if it's what Athens was to Rome during the Roman Empire, if that makes sense. It was considered like a cultural hub, and there was a leader. His name was the Fasting Coyote.
That's awesome.
He was a scholar, a philosopher, a warrior, an architect, a poet, and a ruler. And so if you were under his rule in Texcoco, it's pretty good. But Texcoco had 40,000 people up to. And the smallest one, Tlacopan, had about 15,000 people. Their life was much quieter, more rural. They still benefited from being part of the empire. But I think, remember that this tier list is about if you got cast back through time randomly. So
You're
statistically
more likely
speaking,
to be into
you're
Nostradamus.
way more likely to be into Nostradamus. So yeah.
I don't think I think it's a good life, you know. I genuinely do, because it's literally the bad part is really short at the end.
But you just
Really
talked
short.
about, you just spent a 5-minute segment talking about people getting flayed. And,
Yeah, there were sacrifices. They were captors. They were enemy.
oh, but sometimes, well, they did not sacrifice their own people ever. Surely sometimes.
No, they do not. They sacrifice captors.
And I guess they were
Capture
winning.
the sacrifices.
Winning
You might get sacrificed if you lost. If you went to war yourself and you were captured, you would be sacrificed.
That okay? Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you'd be sacrificed by the enemy. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna put it in S tier. Pretty great. I can't accept that.
I think it
Bro,
is.
most
The thing is,
people live their
with
life
war-
in
with
manual
war,
labor.
you
You
would
had to
buy-
carry everything yourself. There was nothing to carry it for you. It was like hours and
Boats.
hours on end.
Boats.
Only if you're within Tenochtitlan, though. If you're like traveling, yeah, I guess so.
It's only really the traders who did the long. Unless you were one of the runners, we had the runners and the traders. But again, you could get all these like. There's a small chance you'd be elite, very small. There's very few, just like all sizes. The chances are again you're a normal person. But think about where we put Swedes.
Yeah.
I think this is better.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they'd be outraged if we put them in pretty great. S tier for Aztecs. I guess this is. I mean, there's that brief period like when the Spanish show up towards the end of the timeline, and what's the likelihood you'll end up there?
Yeah.
Technology wasn't great. Life was simple, hard work. But, you know, people had magic mushrooms to keep them going. So
But they also, again, they had like these really, like, as much as it was hard work, you had a small patch of land which could continuously support your family because it kept going. It kept on being all year round. That was available for crops.
Damn.
All year round.
You know what? For time reasons, this podcast going on, I think I will let.
I'm fine with A above Swedes, but I think it's S. I'll let you make the final decision. A above
okay,
Swedes.
this is what we're gonna do.
Or S.
This is what we're gonna do. Okay, we're gonna put it in S tier. But if people disagree enough, next episode or next tier list episode, that is, we'll move it down to A tier. All right. With Aztecs from AoE 2 in S tier, which is just before the Siege of Tenochtitlan, but after the Aztecs get kicked out, we now carry on from when Cuauhtemoc becomes Emperor, AoE 3. And Rob, if you adamantly said that Aztecs are S tier, I am going to adamantly say that these Aztecs are F tier.
I agree. 100% agree. 100% agree. I mean, I remember we saw it was like, what was the stat I had from last episode? Was it like 90% eventually died?
I think it was 80 or something. It was
yeah,
80%.
insane numbers.
Absolute
insane numbers.
Decimation. What an ending. I mean, this is like, think about the measles, think about the Siege of Tenochtitlan was awful. Having your empire completely destroyed, being put into basically, well, actually, you say basically slavery. In many cases, definitely slavery by the Spanish. And then being forced to break your own city and rebuild it in the Spanish way, probably work to death in labor camps and stuff. This is genuinely, it's a short time period, and there's not a single year which is good. It's not a single year.
Not a single moment. You might get put in slavery. You might die of smallpox. There's nothing good happening here.